Hey everyone, welcome to Nerdarchy, for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ted, and today I'm joined with
Nerdarchist Dave.
And today we're talking Campaign 2, Session 20 of Critical Role. Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with us.
All right. Ted here claims it's episode 20. I've lost track at this point.
Campaign 2, episode 20 of Critical Role.
Yeah. So they're on their way to the swamp. They're taking some jobs from the gentleman. We get lots of role-playing in this episode. We get introduced some new NPCs with new town.
They're on their way to Barrel Bend in the Binda Swamp, and like the first real encounter that they wind up having is they notice like some large mass in the distance, and it turns out as they get closer that it's soldiers, it's the army that's moving in.
At first they thought it was like a weather phenomenon.
Right. And once they determine that it's soldiers, they kind of go back and forth like, do we hide? Do we run? What do we do? Like they're afraid of getting conscripted. They're afraid that, all this bad stuff of why they left Zadash in the first place is going to, catch up to them. But a group of outriders from the army approach. All of this happens because they're kind of stuck because their wagon, the wheels broke on the one side, and
they hit some rocks or something.
They hit some rocks,
and at first, I was like, why is Matt making them make another check? What is this check for? Is there a point to this? But there was a point this time because he broke their wagon.
So Jester's like, I've got mending, so she mends the front wheel. But the rear wheel is just too messed up, and they're like,
Well, there's a bit of a build up before that because they're like, what tools do we have? What can we do? And then Molly was like, not Molly, Taliesin. It was like, mending. If we just had mending, and Caleb is thinking the same thing, and then Jester's like, I have mending.
Mending is one of those things. It's
so broken. It's such a broken spell.
It's a go-to for me, and each GM is going to allow different amounts of what it can fix, just like how much can prestidigitation clean something. It's
mending. Although mending the way it's written is kind of bullshit because the way it's written, it can pretty much just freaking fix unless everything is missing. You can fix things like a foot at a time.
Well, I believe Matt says that if the entire thing that's broken is more than a foot across, it's a no go. You can't just work on a piece. Like it's got to be all or nothing with the spell. So I think that's how he plays it.
Well, that's fine. I mean, every GM can interpret however they want, but it is that spell's a little bit ambiguous in the wording and stuff. So it can be a bullshit spell,
depending upon how you want to run with it. Absolutely.
But they mend one of the wheels.
So they mend a wheel. The Outriders come, and Captain Maximilian Druvenlode presents himself, and he kind of leads off with this idea that perhaps this is a handsome guy, but he never takes off his helmet, so you never really know. And they kind of fool around, conversing with him, and they're like, can you do anything about our wheel? And lo and behold, he's like, sure. He, rides off with the army, leaving a couple soldiers there to converse with them that they're really not interested in. Either party is interested in conversing. And eventually they come, they fix the wheel. They get it most of the way there. And they head off. The army heads off. They realize at this point in time that it's really only about 1,000 soldiers, which that's quite a lot to be just moving around, but they're heading in the opposite direction that the party's going in, so they're kind of happy that happens. But now Jester's like, well, if they got it most of the way, can mending work now? Because he had said that it's fixed enough to get you to where you're going, but we'll probably need more work once you get there.
It was the old version of the donut is what I thought as soon as they did it.
I was like, I didn't know whether they were going to bring out with a new wheel shaft or what was going to happen. But I kind of find it amusing when, Jester, this little old tiefling, is able to be like, oh yeah, I can hold that, I can lift that, and like the couple guards were struggling to hold it up, and she's like, oh yeah, I got this, and they're like, oh, you don't need me now. So like little moments like that, I find
You keep saying little, but I don't actually know how tall Jester is.
Well,
I think you might be imposing the player upon the character.
when I see like the group shots, they draw her as short. Like she's not halfling short, but she's shorter than everybody else.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to see. There's probably stats somewhere where it like actually defines all their features and everything, because they have crit stats for everything.
I know at one point in time I was able to find like full sheets for the campaign 1 characters, but I haven't seen beyond the little snippets on Alpha as to anything for the campaign 2 characters.
When we're talking about the fight with the Hill Giant, and like someone had put in the comments, they're like, "Oh yeah, this site here, according to this site here, they did 154 points of damage." So yeah, apparently there's someone that tracks everything that they do. I don't know how many poops a day they do or whatever. Somebody's tracking it apparently.
Well, I'm certain that you could definitely get that stat for Scanlan from the first campaign.
If we can get these people that are tracking Critical Role into the NSA, there will never be a terror threat again.
All right, so they wind up, heading off, and they're back into traveling, and the storm comes, and they wind up setting camp for the evening, and here's where things take a bit of a turn as the storm sets in and people begin to get a little leery, during their watches.
Well, they get a little leery. They go through the night, but we also do have a little bit of an occurrence, and that is, Yasha has a dream during the storm.
It's more than just that. He asks everybody to leave the table, which is always those fun moments of like, all right, you get the one-on-ones.
Yeah. So basically, she has a vision during her dream, and the Storm Lord, her deity, kind of speaks to her and lets her know she's on the right path.
Yeah, so like the 3 things that are said is like, you walk the right path, be strong, do not forget who you are or who you will become. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and the question is, does Yasha know who she's going to become?
Well, the deity says, don't forget.
Yes.
So maybe there's more to what's going on there. Yeah. So, I mean, there's clearly more going on than we know, but maybe, Ashley knows more than Yasha does.
Right. Well, and then the tree was struck and split by the lightning. Yasha carves the mark of the Stormlord into it, and like half the party takes a piece of bark.
Well, it was kind of amusing because at first it's like, she's like, I take a piece of bark and I carve the Stormlord into the symbol into the tree. He's like, it's going to be hard to carve in the tree with a piece of bark. She's like, no, idiot.
Comma.
I take a piece of the bark and I use my sword. And now I'm just saying, I'm waiting for the art, the fan art of her with this great sword carving in the tree.
Yeah.
Don't you have a dagger for that?
Something. The spoon from your mess kit, anything.
So after that, everybody takes the piece. They claim it's good luck and what have you, and we'll see whether that actually becomes anything or not. But speaking of not, on the trail ride the next day, she decides that she wants to make acid, and she doesn't care whether she's riding on a horse and it's bouncing. She decides she wants to do it. So Matt's like, well, make a check with disadvantage. And she manages to pull out.
she manages not to eat a hole in through the wagon. Also, speaking of Nott, during the whole soldier episode, Nott did manage to do some legerdemain and steal some trail mix from a saddlebag.
I think it was horse food.
Or horse food. Hey, trail mix is horse food. What's the difference?
So yeah, she doesn't get enough thieving going on, and she gets the mage hand up and running, and voila, she walks away with a little bit of extra, oats and hay and what have you.
Yeah, I guess it isn't long before they're like, what is it? They're like actually traveling through the swamp at that point in order to get to this podunk town that's in the middle of the swamp.
But, Jester winds up hearing some kind of bird cry. Actually, they all hear the bird cry, but she passes her perception check, and it looks more like a humanoid that's having trouble.
A bird person.
It's a bird person that she
Can we
sees.
just say what it is?
It's a Kenku.
It's a Kenku. You know when they're talking, I'm like, it's a little Kenku.
Marisha or Beau see something moving in the swamp, and they wind up realizing that there's a gator going after this little bird person. And Jester's like, no! She charges off in the swamp, cast spells at this thing, and she is dead set on, saving this little bird's life. All the party members are like, do we really have to do this? Like, isn't this gone? Is it worth it?
This is nature just happening.
But she is dead set on saving this thing's life, and the dice are on her side at this point in time, because when the gators, because there's winds up being two of them, wind up attacking, Matt can't roll to save his life. He keeps missing, rolling natural ones, rolling twos, and it's like, wait, it's in the swamp. It's stuck. It's restrained. I get advantage. Yeah. So, he does wind up knocking the thing unconscious with a tail slap. And, the party's, grumbling. He's like, I'm just following the rules.
Yeah, I think in our game, a lot of times we don't roll that stuff. We just narrate. We just, as GMs, we decide what we want to happen and narrate that part. But, either way is fine.
Yeah, it's to each your own. If you want to add tension and roll with the things, sure. I see that Matt does a lot of things that really are meant to have delays and have the tension factor going. So when there's NPCs involved, he's gonna let the dice do what the dice do.
Yeah, I guess the difference, a little bit of the difference in our games is a lot of times, we only really use dice when it's going to affect the players directly. If it's if it's a story element, then I think we tend to narrate a little bit more. But there's tons of different ways that you can do it. I think we probably used to do that back in the day, but at some point we kind of stopped, because it's you start you're just kind of playing with yourself as the DM, because that's who you're rolling against. So after a while, we just kind of streamlined it to narration, and as GMs, we decide how is this going to affect the story, and then kind of roll with it from there.
NPCs that are part of the party, the PCs whoever's managing that will take care of what those actions are.
Yeah, once the NPC kind of gets handed over to the party, that's right. The way we do it. Yeah.
Other than that, it's inconsequential. I'm just not gonna take part. It's all about expeding the combat up, so that you can get to the other aspects of the game and allow the players to shine, and not.
Yeah, part of it's that, but also part of it is too is what is the narration you're trying to lay down as the GM, for us anyway, and is the actual outcome relevant, right? So if it is, right, rolling dice sometimes can be the worst thing you can do, because the dice are going to do what the dice are going to do. So we usually just push it towards the outcome that we want for the story, that then the players are going to interact, and they're going to get to change or do whatever they want to do too.
So they get into the fight, and it winds up amusing at one point in time that Marisha, who's playing Beau, speaks out to Taliesin, but she calls him Percy, instead of Molly. And having watched a good chunk of the first campaign, it takes 20 episodes for the old habits to kind of come back in. And
it was a high tension moment. It was stressful.
And Taliesin, who plays Molly, also played Percy, the gunslinger, in the first game, and she kind of actually slipped into a little bit of her character Keyleth, and not the bro that is Beau. when she called out to Percy. So I thought that was kind of amusing. And she's like 20 episodes in, and I'm calling out the wrong name. What the heck?
It must have been all that nature in the setting that they were in kind of confused her. Yeah, it was interesting too, the fact that like Jester had gone so far ahead of the party. So when the conflict kind of started this time around, like no one they could get there, so they kind of came late, except for Nott managed to get there a little bit quicker with Caleb's help.
Right. Well, Caleb cast haste on him or her, and the fact that as a rogue, she has the ability to dash as a bonus action, that does allow them to get in that much faster. So.
Well, in difficult terrain.
Well,
difficult terrain's a bitch. So
difficult terrain can be,
as we saw,
nasty. Absolutely. So they wind up killing the 2 gators. They wind up casting magic on the little Kenku, and they saved her life. So that wound up being a awesome bit of role playing, as she then began imitating their voices, which the fact that all of them are voice actors, wound up showing as, Kiri, we wound up finding out, her name, a little 4-year-old Kenku, was, imitating Jester and Fjord and Caleb and Nott. It was, interesting. And it's like, well, do we leave her here? Do we bring her with? It was
a lot of debating there. And they also found what they believed what happened to most of her family.
To some of her family. They wind up skidding the gators because, gator hide is kind of valuable considering how tough it is. And, Beau was like, well, tail meat, that stuff's, good eating. I don't know whether that's more Marisha or more Beau. I don't know. But
well, it is supposed to be a delicacy.
They they get into its guts to find out if there's anything valuable there. It's like you find a bunch of bones and a lot of black feathers, and like, oh no,
no! Nott almost died in this fight too.
Nott did almost die, and Jess is like, oh, but I've got Revivify, it's no problem. And it's like, but do you have a 300 gold piece diamond? She's like, what?
I got rings. They have diamonds.
Why am I preparing this spell if I can't cast it?
Yeah, there was definitely a bit of that going on for sure.
So it was
a learning moment. It was a teaching moment for the group.
Definitely. It's like, why do you think Pike always had these diamonds? Why do you think Caleb, had to have this chalice to be able to cast Hero's Feast? You gotta have your necessary spell components. If it's got a gold piece value, you gotta have it. You just can't cast your spell.
Yeah, so from there they then actually end up in the town, right? Pretty much.
Well, Fjord gets the final kill. Yasha gets the first one, and then we get to have a little bit of a spell discussion with haste and someone being unconscious.
Oh yeah, that was part of it too.
It was interesting, and it's like, well, how does this play off? Like in earlier editions, anything that would be like a dex bonus if you're unconscious, you're not going to get that to your armor class. But in 5th edition,
does it distinguish?
There's no distinguishing feature. So it became well, let's look at it. And they don't tend to take a lot of time with rules calls at the table, but they will take a moment to break off and say, well, what does this say?
Because it was really important, because it was a matter of missing by 1 or hitting, and it would have been 2 failed death saves for Nott, and
right.
He would have been grappled.
Right.
Or she would have been grappled.
She would have been grappled with 2 failed death saves.
And the gator is probably going to try and sneak off with its meal. So that could have very well been the end of Nott.
So that, especially with no Revivify, she could have just been done. So the fact, the fact that Matt's like, there's nothing to say that you don't get it. So it's like, well, apparently the corpse vibrates. Or the body. It's not a corpse at that point in time yet.
The almost corpse. Well, yeah, that's like the difference between rules as written and rules as intended. And it was kind of funny because Matt's like, all right, I'm going to my phone. And he was going to look it up on D&D Beyond. And they're like, but then they're joking, nope, going to call Jeremy Crawford. Dial Chris Perkins.
So it's like, can I get a live sage advice here?
Yeah, and then they made the kind of the what is it, the Regis Philbin joke a little bit. So yeah, that part was kind of humorous and funny, and the rules question came up. They handled it fairly fast, moved on, saving Nott's life.
So they take their breaks as they get back on their mounts, to head off. But speaking of mounts, if you want to get fantastical mounts for 5th edition, you can head over to the Nerdarchy store and get your copy.
Yep, recently revised, new art and new layout, so go check that out.
So they saved the baby, they make it to Barrel Bend, and they begin to have some conversation, as Dave says, with some new NPCs, some new areas. They talk to an old woman to find out, where the pub is. And she is a crotchety old woman who has no idea what to do with pocket bacon.
Well, what do you do with pocket bacon anyway?
I think she's, based on how Matt reacted, I think she thinks it's supposed to just stay in your pocket. I'm like, is it supposed to be like,
it's a luck charm. It's a luck charm.
Is it a luck charm? Is it something to make your clothes smell like bacon? I don't know. But they're headed to the Keystone Pub. They find out that is in the Puddles, which is part of Barrel Bend,
which is like a really weird section because it's like it's the ghetto poor section, but it's also sinking, so most of it is partially underwater.
So you have to actually climb up because the Keystone Pub is built on top of the last Keystone Pub that is so far sunk in the ground that they're assuming that at some point in time the door is going to sink and it'll be at ground level. So you got to climb up the ladder to get in.
Yeah, like 8 feet. Yeah, I think just before that they end up talking to some of the the Crown's guards that are there, and Beau kind of gets into a minor confrontation with one of them. And they just don't want to be there. And it just seems like this is the kind of job you get if you're in the Crown's Guard, if you've done something wrong or someone doesn't like you.
So inside the pub, the owner is Det Bonswallow and is an old gnome. The gnome voices that Matt uses, they're always amusing, and he's had quite a few of them.
They're much better than our gnome voices for sure.
It's the difference between somebody who's just trying and somebody who's an honest to goodness voice actor,
I suppose.
So they wind up getting into a conversation. They wind up getting in some of the choice alcohol that this place offers, the Keystone Pub. When they begin looking to find the character that they're quested to go find, it's like, it's apparently a local coot, and we were told if we're gonna be here, we should look him up. And it's like, oh, you mean the guy that's asleep right there?
Yeah, that guy over there.
So Furbin Keys, who has no desire to do anything related to the gentleman anymore. They kind of rouse him from slumber. They offer him some alcohol. They offer him some money.
Well, that's not what I took it as. It was not so much that he wouldn't have anything to do with the gentleman, but whatever was going on had him so freaked out. He was done with what was going on. So, that's why he didn't have anything to do with what the gentleman had going on before. It was like an easy gig. He got paid. It wasn't a big deal. But now shit got a little crazy. He's like, I am not going back there. You cannot pay me enough to go back out there. And then Jester's like 100 gold. I will take you out there, absolutely.
Well, first she offers 100 coins, thinking to, kind of get one over on him. And after the conversation bleeds out, he's like, nope, not copper, not silver. I want gold. And,
and you have to pay up front.
And you got to pay up front. So they kind of, they pay him. They figure out everybody winds up paying a different portion.
Yeah, that part was a little weird.
Caleb's like, I'll give you all the gold I got. He's like, I got nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think it was funny too, and they kind of used the analogy of it's like when you go out with a group of friends and you're trying to split up the check at the end. And it was a lot like that. I don't think it should ever be like that in D&D, but it was.
So it was amusing.
Like some of them were trying to play with debit or credit. Other people had cash. It was just weird.
So, they wind up convincing him to do it, but they paid him the money. It was like, well, now how do we stop him from just skipping out? So it's like, well, you got to stay with us. So by luck of the draw, he winds up getting a room with Yasha. She slides the bed up against the door.
Can we talk about these rooms a little bit?
All right,
The rooms are like prison cells, essentially. It's like being lowered into the dungeon. There's only 4 rooms. It's underground. There's no light. There's no nothing. It's I'm thinking aren't they worried that someone? It's through a trap door, by the way, mind you. Like, aren't they worried someone's just gonna slide like a bar over it or something?
There's no windows. There's only one bed in each room. Now, I mean, we're dealing with, 9 people at this point in time, because you've got the 7 players, you've got Kiri, and now you got Furbin. 4 beds, 9 people.
Perfect. And 2 of the rooms have like an inch of water on the floor.
So he winds up getting into a conversation with Yasha, talking about sharing the bed, and she's like, nope, I'm big, ain't gonna happen.
And he's also trying to sleep naked as well. So yeah,
that's its own whole other thing. So they wind up ending the session, there with them going to be setting out tomorrow on this adventure to get this locked in.
This noble quest,
if you will.
It's for the gentleman. I don't think it's really noble.
So we find out at some point in time that next week there's going to be a guest. Mark Humes, and so they're gonna have yet another party member for this, and I don't think he's playing Furbin. He's not playing the Kenku, so we're gonna wind up seeing who they get as a guest star.
Yeah. They don't need a guide, so it probably won't be. So it's not gonna like that kind of character. Who knows? I'm curious to see. We're gonna have to wait until next week to find out.
So go check it out. Let us know what you thought down in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can also head over to Nerdarchy, the store, and grab your copy of Fantastical Mounts.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.